Welcome to SoundBreaker. On today's episode, we're talking to Jesper Skibsby, who is a groundbreaker in the music industry. Thank you for joining us, Jesper. And for our
Thank you so much.
listeners who might not, my pleasure. For our listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do? And we'll dive
Yeah,
into it later. Just a quick beginning.
absolutely, Bob. Well, my name is Jesper and an entrepreneur. I have a formal background in the music industry. And right now I'm running this company called WARM, which is an acronym for World Airplay Radio Monitor. So it's basically a self-service platform where you can track and detect your radio airplays globally, to cut it short.
Hmm, okay, we're going to get into it. I have a lot of questions towards that.
Yeah, I know.
Very interesting. Um, Jasper, if you don't mind taking us a bit back in time, how this whole thing started with love being in the music business. Is it you were part of a band, or you like music, or your mom or dad or
Mhm.
somebody influenced you to kind of put you on that path?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I'm probably inspired by my brother, who is a pretty big DJ. He's called Morten. He has this future rave together with David Guetta. And
Hmm.
long time ago, I happened to start working at his manager's company. So I did, everything from touring and organizing tours and management and A&R and signing artists and looking at splits and basically the 360 of the music industry.
Hmm.
And at this point, I think maybe in 2014 or 15, I had a discussion with a friend about how difficult it was to actually know if you had any radio airplay, because usually you would get some sort of report or statement from the PRO or the CMO.
Hmm.
And then it would be very difficult to really know. It would just say UK 750 pounds, but you have no idea to figure out if you should have gotten other than that.
Hmm.
So this was kind of like the triggering point for me to go into the space. And as everything else, you have an idea and then you think, oh, I'm just going to make an app, and then everything will be easy. But obviously it was a bit of a long journey from initial idea to then finding investors and making 100 different business plans and different business model, and then get it to work. But it really happened because I was managing this band called Few Wolves in Denmark, and we were signed to a major label, and the music was distributed as usual. And then nothing really happened in Denmark. But then I found that we were actually played quite heavily on rotation on a pretty decent
Yeah.
radio in Poland.
Oh,
And then I went up to
that's how you
the
found out.
A&R, yeah, the product managers, sorry, at this major label. And I
Yeah.
was just thrilled to find this information. I thought now we're going to go touring in Poland and just contacting the radio and everything. But as I found out, the majors work very siloed. So the product manager in Denmark, he was not really excited in that sense, because he knew no one in his company in Poland. And then I
Yeah.
understood, of course, how the whole major label setup works, and that basically ended up triggering me to go and build the platform, so everyone can basically detect their radio airplays in any country, or any
Hmm.
radio for that matter.
And anywhere in the world, correct? Anywhere in the world,
Yeah.
you could. Wow, amazing.
Well, we can probably
Um,
find some African countries and stuff like that where we don't have tremendous coverage, but it is
uh,
an ongoing project, of course, to maintain the monitoring and update it. And sometimes stations change or close or get bought, and new ones arises. So it is a bit of a project to maintain generally. But right
got
now
it.
we are monitoring 25,000 radios in 150 countries.
25,000 radio stations. Wow. Um, Jasper, you've had extensive career in the music industry before founding Warm. How
Mhm.
did your prior experience and and roles in the industry kind of led to your create Warm?
Yeah, well, it was a little bit as I told. I worked with the different independent labels and
Yeah.
managers, and I ended up creating my own label, signed a few artists, and just tried my way. And then yeah, and then I had this experience with finding I think it was 474 radio airplays in a market we had no idea that we had anything. So obviously, at this
Hmm.
point, after I had this experience with the major label, I just contacted the radio station and actually found the person that added the song from my artist. And then we began like we had like a connection, of course, and we sent more music, got more plays, and that transcended a bit into the to social media and streaming and so on. So from that time, it was like everyone should have access to this, of course. And also prior to this, I was part of the board in Danish independent record labels, like a union. So of course, I also
Hmm.
learned from the other labels how complicated it was to actually have
Process.
some kind
Yeah.
of control of your radio airplays.
Mm. Hmm. As a sales agent at the Music DNA, and later the owner of Fandango Music, you were deeply involved in the music management.
Mhm.
How does these roles shape you, understanding the music industry, and influence you or influence your decision to establish Warm?
Yeah, but again, because I had this 360 experience all the way around the music industry, from going on tours, being on the road, and seeing the bands, and handling everything behind the curtains, but also sit at the office and do everything around the music on the both publishing side and the recording side, and managing the artist and
Hmm.
understanding how statements work and everything. Then of course at some point it was just like a eureka moment. It was like
Yes.
I have to
Yeah.
follow this and see where it leads me. And the more I also searched, it was very clear that there wasn't really any platform or any service where you could track your radio
Monitor, track
airplay.
your yes.
Exactly. I mean, it was very siloed, and actually it still is. So there are many different vendors in this space, but they are very siloed. As you know, in the US you have Media Base, and in Germany you have Music Trace, and you have
Yeah.
Radio Monitor, and there's many different vendors, but they all have different markets, and then they also
Got it.
monitor primarily the biggest radio channels, which are usually the most
Yeah.
commercial ones, which is not
Yes.
really
Yes.
helpful if you're an independent artist, and or
Correct.
you're
Correct.
in a specialized area of music.
Warm has a unique approach to monitoring radio airplay in real time. What inspired you to start this venture, and how does Warm provide valuable insights to musician and the music industry?
hmm I mean, I think I'll skip to the last part. I think what is really important here is that
Yes.
everyone can get access to their own data and basically own their own data sets. So if you, for example, you get like a report from BMI, which
Yeah.
tells you like you had airplay in Croatia or in the UK or in Germany 2 years ago, it's not gonna help you jack shit in terms of building your career.
Hmm.
You need to know what is happening with your music when it's happening. And that goes all the way around the music industry, right? It's not only
Correct.
about streaming or only about radio or sync, or it's like it's a very much a 360 deal, right? So you have to pay attention to anything. And let's say you had airplay on a college radio and you're an Icelandic indie band. that would be probably very exotic from the standpoint
Correct.
of the
Correct.
college radio, and that would
Yeah.
give you opportunities to connect with the radios and the DJs and the broadcasters, the gatekeepers in general, which could
Mm.
help you accumulate more plays on other radios. And you have very interesting radios like KXP or something, or Sunshine Live in Germany. You have these pockets of really, really big independent radios in specialist areas, whether it's
Yes.
jazz or alternative or death metal or whatever it is. And these pockets are extremely valuable if you are building a career and you are in a niche, for example.
Got it. Got it. In today's streaming market, it's been primarily dominated. I should say, well, let me rephrase it. I should say, in today's streaming dominated music landscape, why do you believe that radio airplay is still important
Mhm.
for artists, and how does one bridge the gap between traditional radio and digital, and the digital era which we're in right now?
hmm I mean, it's obviously a question I run into quite often, especially
Yeah.
for young people, who's
Yeah.
like who's brought up with streaming, and that's their world, of course. But I would say, again, to replicate what I said before, I think you have to see it, with different sets of eyes, right? You have to treat your career 360. It's not only TikTok or only streaming or only radio. It's more like a holistic approach, right? So let me give you an example. So, for example, if I wanted to go run and I wanted to listen to some music or whatever, I would not
Yes.
listen to a radio. I would find a running
A
playlist or
streaming
something,
plat.
right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But if I was at home making dinner and I would just wanted to listen to some music, I
Yeah.
like jazz. Then I would just find, a nice jazz radio from Paris or Belgium or something, where I trust the curators, and I'm basically part of a community in that sense. And actually, during COVID, we saw an increase in radio because people were so secluded at home, so they wanted to at least
Listen
you
to
know
somebody talking, not just playing
listen to
music,
something,
because
yeah,
radio is
be
still, yeah.
be part of something, right? And it's
Yeah.
like you basically trust that someone knows what you should hear, and that is, of course, a little bit similar to streaming.
Yeah.
But you still have to proactively usually find music. It's rarely you just click play on Spotify and then you would not skip at all. And then I think something else is quite interesting, because I believe there is quite of a wheel between streaming, Shazam, like identifying music, and then radio. So
Hmm.
there is studies showing that it's actually usually radio people listen to music the first time, and then
Hmm.
people would usually Shazam it. I mean, I'm generalizing a bit. Then you would
Yes.
Shazam it. You would figure out what this music is. Then you would
And then you'll
probably add
stream
it to
it.
your playlist on
Yes.
streaming, or you would maybe go to a show further down the line. And so this is kind of like a cycle, which I find quite interesting. And then to close us off, also study shows that radio is still the biggest format for music consumption globally.
Is
We
it
have a
still?
tendency, yeah, we have a still tendency to think, because we are in the Western world, we have streaming, and we have access to that. But for example, Africa, for example, South Africa, Nigeria, places like that, where there's like a lot of people, they do not have access to streaming the same way. They still use downloads. But of course, streaming is increasingly becoming more and more common, and that will, of
Correct.
course, continue. But I think that niche radios and people that are very specialized and stuff, for example, jazz, rock, death metal, country, whatever. I think that these kind of genres, they still would work very much with the radio, because people want to learn and they want to listen and get uh, uh, music provided for them, basically
Got
from
it.
curators.
I'm pretty impressed actually for you to find success in that type of business at a time where, as I mentioned in my previous question, that streaming platform pretty much dominate the industry, and the other way to promotion is you got Meta, which is, Reels, YouTube Shorts, and TikTok and
Mhm.
all of that. So, my thing is like you would, I don't know if you'll find the same success now or maybe 20 years ago you will have been probably you'll have more success, but I'm kind of surprised radio still dominate the success of a lot of the music that we hear out there. You mentioned earlier in the conversation there's about what 25,000 radio station, and that's not all, correct? That's not all.
No, no, there. I mean, we will never get to the finish line. I mean, there will
Yeah.
always be radio stations to add, but we try to prioritize them basically with the help of our customers.
Hmm.
So our customers, of course, are the record labels, radio promoters, artists, managers, publishers. So also again the 360 of the music industry. And so if we get new clients in Brazil, for example, and right now
Correct.
I think we are monitoring maybe 700-800 radios in Brazil, then some label would say, hey, you need to add this particular radio station because it's not monitored on your list,
No.
which is also completely transparent to people.
Hmm.
Then we
Hmm.
will just put it on the list, and we will start monitoring it. So it's like an ongoing process. We monitor. We start monitoring maybe 100 new radios a month.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's an ongoing project.
Amazing. I mean, congrats. I mean, this is great that you're able to find success in something very niche. And that's why probably. And your clients mostly B2B. You said 360, but the majority are B2B, correct?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, primarily it's dominated by the record labels and
Labels, yeah.
obviously the radio promoters, and then of course we have a lot of artists signing up. But of course, our primarily business is ventured around
Uh,
B2B music
yes.
companies in that
Got
sense.
it.
Yeah.
Could you share some success stories or notable artists and songs that Warm has helped and demonstrating the impact your platform had on their or has had on their career and music industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the one with my own example is quite good because that was like my own personal experience. But on
Yes.
top of that, one of my latest how to say the latest I can't find the word. We have a client that it's a DJ group actually also from Denmark called Tripleism, and they
Yeah.
actually they make this track called Dope Dance. They're signed
Yeah.
to big electronic labels. And
Uh-huh.
they found actually that a majority of their radio airplays, I think it's around 80% of their radio plays, are
Wow.
in Greece. And so now they are just playing a shit ton of jobs in Greece, in Athens, and small party islands. And this song has just connected so much with Greece, and I still don't think anyone really knows why. But it's these, type of pockets that you can discover because we have this huge coverage and with specialist radios and niche radios in most countries. So of course that increases the likelihood for you to actually detect something. If we were
Hmm.
only monitoring Sirius XM and BBC and Capital and iHeart, then primarily people would not discover anything unless you're
Yes.
Justin Bieber or Rihanna or David Guetta. So I think I mean, what it all comes down to is opportunities, right? So if you see something, you can use it for a lot of opportunities. You can compare it with your streaming data. You can use it to targeting your ads on social medias. Of course, go and do tours. But look at it holistic and do comparisons. I mean, also like if you looked at your Spotify playlist and saw where most of your plays come from, if they come from Mexico, you wouldn't just
Yeah.
go to Mexico because that could
Correct.
be because of other things. Like it could be because they are Spotify is expanding in in Mexico, and there's a lot of people there. But
Yes.
if you have, let's say you have positivity from radio, and you have from streaming, and you have some engagement on social media and stuff like that, then you suddenly have, a ground to do something in a particular market.
Yes. I mean, I would say your platform actually helping independent artists a lot, because a lot of these artists, if they are getting plays they're not aware of, and your platform helps them, to discover
Absolutely.
that. And as you mentioned in the story with the band, that's getting heavy airplay in Greece, so that, hey, let's start touring there.
Absolutely. And now they
Great,
play
great.
there like every month, or maybe
Wow.
even more. So it's
Amazing.
it's it's super interesting.
That's an incredible journey you've had so far, Justin. Jasper. Now I call you Justin for.
No problem.
Excuse me.
Justin Bieber.
The music industry is known for its challenges and setbacks. Can you share a difficult moment you faced in your career and you had to overcome it?
I mean, to be honest, there are so many.
Please.
So I'm a solo founder. I mean, I had an
Yes.
idea. I started a company. I got investors, and you have to know everything, right? Again, 360. This is this is the word for this podcast,
Yes.
because you have to understand everything around your business. You have to make the business plan. You have to talk with investors. You have to raise the money. You have to do sales. You have to do business development. You have to understand the technology. You have to have agreements with other partners and vendors, and you
Yes. A
also have to
lot.
be
There's
on
a
the
lot of
road.
technicalities. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many challenges, I would say. One
Well,
of my early challenges was that I actually had, just when I had closed my first investment round, or I thought so. Then I had these three guys that were supposed to join the company, and then the day before we were about to sign the contract,
yeah.
then they said they suddenly wanted, like, to have control of a lot of things. Like, then
Mm.
you can't buy anything over $1,000 unless we would give you
With that, yes.
approval.
Yeah.
And for me it was like, this is not going to happen. I mean, I
Yes.
can't run a business like this.
Yes.
And then I ended up turning them down, and then I went with one investor, which was not necessarily completely thrilled to go from a syndicate investment group, four people, and then suddenly only one. But then we got money, we got started, we had a product launched, and then I could go and pitch this to other investors, and then
Great.
we actually succeeded still. But there's been a lot of challenges, I would say.
Well, let me ask you something. I mean, honestly, for our viewers and myself and our listeners, that you started a business, that the business model, some of these investors might say, hey, wait a second, radio, for an investor might say, hey, radio is dead, or radio is not so much. You got streaming platform. I'm not, this idea I think is a bit too old for me. How was your pitch, and what was the main thing to convince these investors to give you money for such a great idea? I think because it's a niche idea, and obviously major labels and all record labels, independent and majors and publishers and others, could use your service because this is a major income and a major promotion,
Mm,
especially income when I say that, because of publishing. That's all
yeah,
radio play, it's all publishing money. So
yeah.
I mean, how was your pitch? Please share it with us. Share some of your wealthy knowledge, so our listeners and and viewers will
um
know when they
I
come up with an
mean,
idea.
I was very, very excited, and then I
Yes.
was lucky enough to find an investor who was starting out with music investments, and we
Yeah.
really got along. So I think it was a bit of trust, but also a bit of that he basically understood the problems. And
Yeah.
regardless of how many questions he asked me, I knew, because I've done my due diligence. I understood how the industry worked. I understood how majors worked. I understood how indies worked. I understood
Yes.
how majors are basically infiltrating
Yeah.
these different societies and the CMOs, PROs, basically dominating everything around that. They only want to monitor or pay for monitoring through these memberships or partnerships on the top level. So it's actually what I did this article not long ago called the reverse Robin Hood model of radio, because
Uh-huh.
this is actually what is happening. Is like saying the biggest players in the music industry saying it is only the biggest radios that are relevant, all other doesn't matter. And that is true from a major label perspective, because they want to go where the money is. They also have the money to be able to pay the radios, at least in the
Yes.
US. And that's not necessarily how it works in Europe, but still they have an impact, and they have, all the muscles to
So
basically
you're saying the pay by play, it still exists till this day?
the payola setup.
Yeah, I call it pay by
Yes.
play. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that in the US
Well,
this
no, but
is.
I didn't know it still exists. Actually, I thought it's kind of went away because of streaming platform and social media platforms and all of that. But
No,
obviously,
of course.
still, it's
Like,
a
I
very
mean,
powerful thing.
Billboard is still a big power player. Airplay charts
Correct.
are really important, and of course,
Yeah.
this is still a thing in particular in the US, where things works a little bit different than, for example, in Europe. In Europe, the majors do not necessarily pay, the radios in that sense. But if the radio come, or if the a label in Denmark comes with a new Rihanna album or whatever, the radio will play it. It's not a question. And the same goes for their own local priorities. If there's a new Danish act, the biggest radios will play it. If it's Sony, Warner, Universal, that's how it
Got
works,
it.
and that is very similar to how it works in most countries.
Yes. Um, that is really very inspiring. In your opinion, what are common misconception people have about the music industry?
Misconceptions. I don't know. That
Yeah.
must be very individual. I mean, there are so many
Yes.
things that are challenging. I think one of the things that are really challenging is that the artist, for example, you have, let's say, you are a creative soul, and you are great at making music or making good songs or whatever, and then from there to actually succeed with it, that is, it's so difficult. You need to
Yes.
understand your brand, you need to have an appearance, you need to be good on the stage. I mean, of course, there are situations where you just make a funny dance with a song and it becomes a hit on TikTok, and then you're
Yes.
set. but
It goes
but
viral.
usually,
Yeah.
yeah, but usually, you need to be good at a lot of things. You need to eventually have a manager, and how do you find a manager if you don't know, like, and how do you find a booking agent, and how do you make sure that you are surrounded with good people? How do you brand yourself? Should you do that, or should you have other people doing it? How do you stand out from the crowd? How do you make new music? Like, how do you make something genuinely different than what also already
Yes.
exists? There is like maybe 120, 150,000 songs released on Spotify daily. How
Wow.
do you separate yourself from the other
Yes.
149,999 songs? I mean, it's like,
Yes. Yes.
and at this, as soon as the song is released, it's history, because
Yes.
then
Yes.
it's about the new thing. And even if you are, so lucky or good that you actually make a great song, and it gets spins and it gets playlist ads and all that, then you need to follow it up with something that is even better. And so it's really difficult, I think, for artists nowadays, even though there are lots of tools and possibilities that can help them. For example, with AI, and like, for example, we could record a song now and we could release it tomorrow. But
Correct.
so it's like there are so many opportunities. It's easier to produce music, it's easier to release music, it's easier to promote music. and so on. But it also means that there are huge competition, and it's really
Yes.
difficult to get through the noise, even if you have a fantastic song.
Yes, always. You're right. As you know, collaboration is often a key element in the music industry or music world. Could you share a memorable collaboration story or someone you work with and left an impact on you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my chairman, a guy called Michael Rito, like a
Yeah,
legendary music guy in Denmark,
yeah.
been part of many different music ventures. Some of the most successful music ventures in Denmark, and
Hmm.
he's an absolute legend. And I really wanted to get him involved in the company because I really thought, as the solo founder situation, that it would be really helpful for me to have, someone with a lot more knowledge and industry knowledge in particular to join
Helps
forces.
you
And
run the company. Yeah.
yeah, and I got him involved, I think 3 years ago, and we have weekly meetings, and he's so dedicated, and we're very similar mindset, even though we're very different. And it's just been like a fantastic. I mean, I think it's like one of the main things that I'm still around because I suddenly had someone to spar with and make the right decisions, because there are a lot of decisions to be made, but you have
Yes.
to make the right ones, right?
It's very important to have the right team with you always. Always. You cannot get there
Absolutely.
alone. Yeah,
I agree.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, Technology has significantly changed the music landscape. How have advancements in technology influenced your work and the music industry as a whole?
I mean, there's always a new buzzword, Then it
Hmm.
was blockchain. Then everyone wanted to make things with blockchain, and the blockchain is going to save the music industry, and so on. And
Hmm.
and I'm not saying it's not going to be a part of the solution. I think it will be eventually. But then suddenly it was crypto, and then it was NFTs, and then recently it's AI, of course. But what I've seen is that AI is really something that is useful, because it's
Hmm.
not just a buzzword. It's actually something that my father can use when he needs to, make a presentation, or it's something we
Yes.
can use in customer support, or it's something we could use in terms of creating like opportunities for customers. Like we could create a bot that could, like a warm helper, could say like, where should I go tour? Because for most people it's not necessarily easy to understand your data, even though maybe
Yes.
for others it would be like, well, it's easy to see. But you could train an AI, warm helper, that could help you with making
Absolutely.
decisions. For example, um, I could see, this be involved in, for example, radio promotion. I mean, of course, radio promoters and pluggers are really important because they have this personal relationship. But
Correct.
imagine, if you could use AI to promote your music to radios that are similar in the sound, and also based on a size of the artist compared to the size of the radio. So if you could bring all this data and knowledge into an AI, then I think you could make some really interesting products. For example, um, even if you want to write a biography, if you want
Yeah.
to, it's. I had a developer who actually said it really well with AI, that it's like having like an assistant or like a junior person. Let's say, for example, a junior developer. So you can ask them to do stuff, but you would have to control their work. And that is the
Yes.
same with AI. You can basically, it can really help you with a lot of things. Of course, you should not trust it blindly. You have to
Correct.
audit it, and you have to use it for what it is. But
Yeah.
at the same time, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, right? So it will be really interesting to see where this will take, a
Oh, a
lot
lot
of it,
more. A lot
a
more
lot
coming
of
and faster than you
industries.
think. Yes.
Yeah, and not even music, but all businesses will have to understand and use AI, otherwise
Yeah.
they will not be here.
Yes. They won't survive. Yes, they won't be able to go forward. Absolutely. Jasper, how do you stay updated to the latest trends, innovation, or changes in the industry, and how important it is to continue to learn?
I mean, learning is everything. I mean, you should never think you know everything. You have to talk with people. I mean, what I do is I go to a lot of conferences
Yes.
globally. So I meet a lot of people. Actually, I meet a lot of the same people more than some of my best friends, because I meet them maybe 10, 12 times a year or something.
Yeah.
So this way to create relationships and have these interesting conversations I find is extremely valuable. And then
Yes.
LinkedIn is basically my echo chamber, because I've built it for a long time, so it's primarily music industry professionals and music technology.
Yeah.
So it just keeps on delivering this echo chamber of music and innovation, which is really
Yes.
useful for me
I
because
mean,
that's
LinkedIn is a
more or
great place
less
for
what I'm interested
professionals
in.
in any industry. Whatever you're
Um,
seeking. Yes. Yes. I mean, it's
exactly.
all there.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then of
Big
course
fan of
I,
it.
I, I keep up with the music LI and music business worldwide and different
Yes.
outlets and medias where I find new information about what happens in the music industry. Um,
Hmm.
there's a lot of
Well, we
opportunities.
need, yes, absolutely. We need your kind of some tips from you or some guidance for our listeners and viewers when they
Mhm.
watch this episode, when we release it out there. They're going to be inspired by your story. It's like, hey, I want to take the same path as Jasper took. So, any tips, any advice? Because there's a lot of gatekeeping in this business. So, please share some of your wisdom and some of your advice to our listeners who are just starting out.
I mean, you mentioned it yourself before. Team is everything. Like, find the
Correct.
right people to work with or make a decision, and don't rush anything. Like a lot of people, they spend a long time making music, perfecting all kinds of things in the sound sphere, and they want to make the perfect album cover, even though it's only miniature on on the streaming
Mm.
platform, and
Yes.
and then they want to release it now. Take your
Yes.
time and do a good strategy, whether you are doing a company or an artist career. It's also about being original and be true to what you do. I mean, if I had to go with every kind of buzzword that is up every year, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do this because I stuck to radio because I found this was the path I needed to go with. I could also start getting Spotify data and all that, but the distributors do that, and we have Chartmetric, and we have sound charts. There's lots of different companies that are doing the exact same thing around streaming data and social media data,
Correct.
and I just decided not to do that and just focus only on radio and be very specialized in that field. So I think to be true to yourself, be original, and be specialized. Whether you're practicing being playing the trumpet or building a company, and just don't do what everyone else is doing. Try to find your own way, and it also the same for branding, right? With the artists
Correct.
and labels, don't just take black clothes on as everyone else or whatever it is. Try to stand out and listen to yourself, and follow your heart. Even though it sounds almost a bit cliche, but I think
No.
there's something to it.
Listen,
um
sometime you will got to go back to the basics, honestly. And the basics, what carries us. We have to go back to that. And your advice is very genuine. And I would say it would hit the right note to a lot of our viewers and listeners who are going to be inspired by your story and they want to carve their own path in the music industry.
Yeah, and then I read a book at once called the Mom Test, which is quite interesting because it's basically about when you have ideas or ventures, or an idea for a startup or whatever,
Mhm.
then you should go and get feedback from people. And with people, I don't mean your mom, because she would just say you're fantastic. That's the best idea ever. You should go to people that could give
In the
you
industry.
right, go to people that can really give you some feedback that you can use for this.
Absolutely.
And actually a lot of people would be very happy to give feedback. So it's also about, and don't be afraid of sharing your idea. It's not very likely that someone will just steal your idea and do it themselves. People have their own shit to do. So it's not so common people run around trying to steal other people's ideas. And
Yes. Yes.
so I would say, yeah, get feedback and be genuinely interested in other people also, of course.
And be original, as you
Yeah,
said.
absolutely.
Yes.
Stand out.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners will find all of these information very valuable, valuable insights. Um, before we say, wrap up this wonderful interview that we enjoyed, and it's a lot of great, insightful
We're also running
information that
out
you
of
give us.
light. We're also running out of light here.
All right, we'll wrap it up. Anything you want to promote, or any new project that's coming up, or something new that you want to,
I
tell our
mean,
listeners and viewers?
we're constantly developing the platform. We're enriching the
Yeah,
data. Now we are
yeah,
adding audience figures, for example,
yes,
because that's very relevant for people to see. What
yeah,
is this radio? Is it big or is it small?
yeah.
So there's constantly developing. But one of the things that I want to highlight that I'm working on is a royalty
Please,
calculator on the
yes,
publishing side, because I found that, again, this, due to the silo-ness of the music industry, the different PROs, they basically have their own rates and their own tariffs and their own systems connected to the
yes,
specific radios, which is a mess if you're a songwriter or a publisher. If you're in the UK, how would you know how much you should get in the UK, in Germany,
you
or in
have
the
to chase
US, or in
everywhere.
France?
Yes,
Yeah, and then
correct.
if you go to the French webpage from SACEM, then it's in French, and you can't get access to it because you need to be a direct member of SACEM. So what we did is that we actually collected some of these rates from a few different countries, and then we merged them in the database with the connected to our radios. So actually now we have this beta version where you can take a song, take the report from Warm, ingest it into the system, and then it will basically calculate how many royalties this song has earned in this given time frame. So this is a
Wow,
product I'm really looking forward to
very
launching,
interesting. Yes,
because I
yes.
think it
So
will be
this,
very helpful for people to be able to see in real time actually how much the song has earned, instead of waiting years
yes,
to
and you don't
get
have to
something.
deal with different publishers in different countries, in different territories. You know
Exactly,
that.
and at least you have the evidence. So maybe you
Yes,
would still
very
have these
important.
people to help you collect the money, but at least you would own the data again. You would
Yes,
know this is not seven
work.
hundred
Yes,
dollars. This is
yes.
7,000.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, it prevents a lot of that. Very, very important. Actually, how should I say, tool that you guys added to your platform to Warm.
It
Very,
will
very
come
important tool.
eventually,
Yeah.
hopefully sometime this year.
Yes. Well, as always, a lot of great things had to come to an end.
Yeah,
Thank you for joining us today, Jasper. Sorry about the electricity that you're experiencing.
yeah. I'm so
This
sorry. I'm
concludes.
sitting here with candlelights.
It's all right. This concludes today's episode of SoundBreaker. Please make sure to follow us on socials to stay tuned for new episodes. See you and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. My pleasure.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the SoundBreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.